Hey folks, it's Finn. This week I would like to talk about trans language, specifically the word cisgender. This word tends to have a lot of misunderstanding with folks that aren't familiar with trans people and trans language. But that's okay. It's all about learning. We have to be a little bit more considerate for people who don't understand our language, because you wouldn't go over to France, get off a boat and be expected to know fluent French. The most you'll be asked is to try, and it's the same for trans language. You don't meet a trans person and then automatically know everything about how to talk trans language. As they say, it's only easy if you know it. One comment that often comes up about the word cisgender is that it means sissy in some way, that we as trans folk are using it to people who aren't trans as a way of name calling or a way of labelling them in the same way that we feel labelled. It's surprising how many people think that's the case. Nope, it's an actual word. It is in the Oxford Dictionary. Cis is a Latin term and it means on the same side of, whereas trans means on the other side of. Cisgender people identify their gender with the gender they were assigned at birth. So they are on the same side of. Cis, same side of. Trans, that's me, assigned female at birth, but grew up, realised I was male. So my gender identity does not match that I was assigned at birth. Therefore, I'm trans on the other side of. Does that make sense? So no, it is not a derogative term, and it is not meant to be used in that way. It's to help differentiate between cis people and trans people, because we do at times need to explain and describe people differently in the same way that we might say, oh, this person's gay and this person's straight. It's exactly the same. It's saying this person's trans and this person's cis. And the reason this is done is because otherwise you risk people saying things like, oh no, he isn't trans, he's a normal man, or he's a real man. Please don't ever say that. That hurts. Even saying non-trans still sets up this kind of feeling that trans people bad, cis people good, and we don't want that. We're all men, we're all women, we're all however we identify. Yes, trans men are men, trans women are women. So this is the reason for cisgender, to prevent using language that harms trans people. Often when this is explained to people that are cis, they still take offence with it, arguing that it's not fair that we as transgender people are forcing a label on them as cisgender. I would argue we're not forcing a label. The label already exists. There are people that are trans and people that aren't, just as there are people that are gay and people that aren't. Nobody is imposing a label. It just is there to differentiate between the two. It's just preventing one identity being seen as more normative and better and held in high regard than another. However, I do acknowledge that this is a less than perfect word, because what it's doing is still saying that you're either or. There is either cis or there is either trans. And as we're coming to realise, hopefully, there are very, very, very many different ways to identify. We have intersex people, genderqueer people, transgender people, non-binary people. The list is endless. And so by calling people cis or trans, it misses out on a whole range of spectrum. It's also quite complicated then for a cis person whose gender does correspond to that of birth, but who might explore and play with their gender in different ways. And so they aren't actually completely cisgender at all, but neither are they completely transgender. And it misses all of these other myriad of ways we have of expressing, of playing with, of identifying with gender. Cis really misses out on all of that. Language is complex and ever-changing as we come to understand each other and ourselves. It grows and evolves as it should. And looking for a better way forward, I don't know. A lot of people use gender normative, which does explain things better. If you're gender normative, it means you assign to your gender at birth, you assign to all the roles that your gender gives you, all the stereotypes, so forth. Whereas if you're gender non-normative, then that gives you more scope to play your gender, and you can be trans, or you can be gender queer, or you can be a person who just likes to play with their gender. It does give more scope. But for me, it still feels like you're saying gender normative, gender non-normative. You're saying that to do gender differently is not normal. And whilst it might be different than most of the society around us does, it doesn't mean it's not normal. So I don't know. So whilst I agree it is a less than perfect word, it isn't less than perfect because it's used in a derogatory way at all. It's never meant like that. It's just not a perfect word because it doesn't adequately describe people's gender experience. But for now, when you hear that word cisgender, please know that it is an actual term to describe somebody that isn't trans. It never is anything personal about you. I hope that helped to clear a few things up. If you have any questions, please do drop me a comment in the section below, or you can pop a message over to me on my website. I am always happy to hear other people's thoughts on this. If you're a trans person and you don't like the word cis, what word do you use? What about you cis people who aren't transgender? How do you feel about this? Has this helped? I would love to hear your thoughts. I like it when our thoughts mingle. Thanks for watching, everybody. If this is your first time watching my videos, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button, because when you do, I can keep you up to date with all the regular Finnstalments. Have a good rest of week and weekend. Bye bye.